The regular notice of requirement of the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act has been complied with, and that adequate advance notice of this meeting was given at least 48 hours in advance. On notice was mailed to the Courier Post in the Aldea. Notice was also posted on the bulletin board located by the reception desk at the central office in all school building bulletin boards within the district. We'll now turn the meeting over to Member Hunterford.
Pledge.
Pledge. You got a pledge again.
Yeah.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Jose Brito Bueno. Ms. Dorothy Burley. Ms. Barbara Coscarello. Ms. Taisha Manir. Minister Wasim Muhammad.
Here.
Mrs. Felicia Reyes Morton. Here. Mrs. Martha Wilson.
Present.
Ms. Catherine Blackshear. Okay. Board President, we have a quorum.
So you want to kick it over to me? All right, just jump in. All right, so I'm going to give the budget presentation, and folks are going to move down to the front row again. All right. A hearty thank you to the 12 of you that stayed around for the budget presentation. So I'm going to lead the presentation, and then our school business administrator, Regina Robinson, is going to come in and provide a more detailed overview. So we are presenting to you our 15-16 budget. We're excited to say that we have been able to pull together a proposed balanced budget. It ensures that fundamentally we have the right resources here in the district, and it will also talk about how we're allocating resources across all school types. I imagine most of you are probably familiar with the fact that the district effectively serves as a pass-through as the dollar follows the students to charter schools and to Renaissance schools. So we'll talk about that overall allocation of resources. But again, let me state again, fundamentally we believe that our budget does address the needs of our district. And while there's been a lot of talk tonight about Renaissance schools and their growth going forward, like I said earlier, the vast majority of students in Camden attending publicly funded schools are going to remain with the district. So I'll just kick off by pointing out the fact that, so this is, I know you can't see every last number, so I'll walk you all through it. What you can see here, and that's boxed in red at the top, is state aid. So last year we received from the state $280 million approximately, and this year we're receiving the same amount, meaning the biggest source of our revenue is flat. And in other parts of the state, and also other parts of the country, they are not experiencing that trend. Most places throughout the country, but certainly I can say in New Jersey, some places are experiencing a decline in overall aid, both locally and at the state level. So we are pleased with the fact that we can say our state aid is flat. There's a small local tax levy, which I also mentioned earlier, $7.5 million, that's also flat. And if you just fast forward all the way to the bottom, in terms of total net revenue, last year we had $360 million. This year we have $350. That small difference of 4% decline has to do with the fund balance appropriation. So the third line there shows last year we spent $18 million on our fund balance, and this year we're proposing $9 million. That's really the biggest decline, and that, believe it or not, is a good thing. Anytime you have less funds, it may not always feel like a good thing, but what that means is that we are less dependent upon one-time money. So a fund balance is a pot of one-time money that you use in an emergency. And last year we had to use $18 million to offset the revenue shortfall. And so for this year, we're using less one-time money. So all in all, in terms of total revenue, it is as positive as a picture as you could hope for, especially given the environment that we're in. So I want to just remind us of where we were just a year ago. A year ago, we had, and this is the bar on the far right here, we were at a $75 million revenue shortfall. And so that was fundamentally driven by the fact that in prior years, the district had effectively kicked the can, with families choosing to go to other school types well before I was appointed superintendent. The district did not realign resources for the number of students within district schools. And that was driven by so last year, out of the $75 million revenue shortfall, $57 million were an operating deficit, again, as a result of prior inaction and mismanagement of resources. And then there was an additional $18 million increase in terms of families choosing Renaissance and charter schools, which led to 75, but the vast, vast majority of that was driven by inaction. The key to moving forward will be aligning resources to our enrollment, because we right-sized that budget, and that was as difficult a budget as Camden will ever experience. So we've addressed that and made those difficult decisions. 575 positions were eliminated last year, just as a reminder. But going forward, we've gotten this out of the way, but going forward, as families make other decisions, and some students end up enrolling in Renaissance schools or charter schools, we have to realign our resources and cut certain expenditures in order to balance our budget, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So that's driven by enrollment, so let's just talk about projected enrollment now. So you can see the overall mix of charter and Renaissance schools for the last 2 years, so school year 13-14 and then school year 14-15, which we're currently in, compared to what's being projected next year. So in short, charters have roughly been serving between 25, a little over 30% of the total enrollment over time. And this year with Renaissance schools serving about 530 students. For next year, given the decisions we rolled out last week, and again, families will ultimately make these decisions and we will address our budget accordingly. But what we are projecting is the district with roughly 1,500 students choosing to go to either a Renaissance school or a charter school, 1,500 more students than the year before. And so Renaissance schools we're really projecting to take in a lion's share in terms of the overall enrollment, and with charter schools increasing moderately at roughly 260 students. So you can see here what's been circled for the 15-16 school year, Renaissance schools growing, and the district potentially losing some enrollment. And again, this is families choosing these schools. So this then lays out the same impact in terms of the reduction in expenditures we would need to make as a result of, again, the one-time money we used last year, plus the increase in enrollment in other school types. So last year, if you might remember, and I mentioned this actually here on slide 19, the fund balance appropriation of $18 million. So that's what we set aside to use in the fund balance. Thankfully, we didn't need to use all $18 million. We did end up needing to use $13 million, and that's on the far left. So we were conservative in our budgeting. We only ended up needing to use 13 out of the 18, but because we used $13 million, and that's one-time money, that then leads to a shortfall this year. In addition to that, you see the increase in Renaissance and charter schools, and that's roughly $33 million. And then lastly, there's a $3 million increase for labor-related costs. We have invested heavily with a new teacher's contract. We just ratified a new administrator's contract with CCPSA, and we are working really hard to ratify, or come to an agreement, I should say, on CWA and with school psychologists as well. So that then leads to an anticipated expenditure reduction of $49 million. So not as severe as last year. And again, the focus will be on aligning resources to the number of students that we're going to be serving inside of our schools. I'm going to walk you all through how we're going to do that. So before I actually walk you through those specifics, what I want to make very clear, and I know this is a huge concern, and a number of people expressed it earlier, and I'm sure we'll hear it in the subsequent board meetings, are our students receiving proper funding as some families choose to send their students into other school types? The answer is absolutely yes, but I'm going to prove it to you based on the numbers. So same chart that you just saw, this is the breakdown in enrollment that we're projecting for next year. So the district will have almost 60% of the total students. Charters are going to stay at roughly 30%, and Renaissance schools are projected to be roughly 15%. So if you then take into account where the dollars are going, and how it's actually distributed across those three school types, this is how it breaks down. The district will get $202 million out of that overall budget that I just presented to you. This does not include pre-K. Most of our funds go to K-12. So charters get a relatively smaller proportion of the funds based on how many students they're serving, relatively less. And Renaissance schools, slightly less, again, based on the number of students they're serving. So the district gets the lion's share of the total revenue, and you can, again, prove that out based on our per pupil spending. So at district schools, in our budget that we're presenting to you today, each child, we are investing $23,500. And if you compare that to Renaissance schools, it's roughly $19,000. And at charter schools, it's substantially less. So Renaissance schools do get some incremental funding, and this is the facilities work. But with the district schools, let me just say this. While a lot of charter advocates and charter families are really frustrated at the fact that charter schools get substantially less funding, and same with Renaissance schools, I do believe that the extra funding that goes to the district is warranted because it does facilitate the needs of our students. It does facilitate a transition during times like this. And so, that additional funding, I do believe, is very important. I'm not here to tell you that we shouldn't be getting that additional funding. But what I am here to tell you is that when you actually look at how the money is split up across school types, there's a lot of anxiety about the decisions we're going to have to make, but most of it goes to our district schools. That's the bottom line, and that's just black and white. So as we think about this realignment, there is a core principle here. And I hope this goes without saying, but it's to ensure that the academic programming and extracurricular activities meet our students' needs for student achievement and for a thorough and efficient education. So we've begun by implementing some tighter financial controls to reduce just wasteful spending, and a lot of that is situated in the central office, and we made the necessary cuts last year, and we're going to continue to tighten the belt this year. And so when we can reduce bureaucratic spending and find efficiencies, we are more likely to get dollars into the classroom. Because I can also understand the sentiment that even though we're spending $23,000 for every student, it doesn't always feel that way. So we need to make sure as much of those funds get down to the school level as possible. So how are we going to take that $40 million expenditure reduction and apply it to get it to zero? So the first thing we're going to do, and I mentioned this earlier, we're going to use the remainder of our excess fund balance. So that's $9 million. Last year we projected to use 18. This year we're projecting to use 9. So that's the first thing we're going to do. The next thing we're going to do is cut in the central office. So that's the $16 million bar here. And I'm going to walk you through examples of those cuts in a moment, but that's the second step here. The last step would be to think about school level realignment of resources and expenditure reductions, because we want to first do everything possible before we get down to the school level. And that is roughly $24 million. And again, we'll walk through what that all entails in a moment. So at the central office, we started the central office by addressing non-personnel reductions. Let me just remind you all that last year in the central office, we cut $29 million of just non-personnel expenditures, $29 million. So we cut deep last year, and as a result, there's not as much to cut this year, and the number is a little bit lower. However, of the $13 million that we're projecting to cut in non-personnel reductions, $10 million of that comes in facilities. And the majority of that $10 million are savings to the district as a result of our partnership with Renaissance schools at those 5 buildings. Those 5 buildings, to some degree or another, were absolute money pits for us, because they're old buildings, they're falling apart, and we have to pump in money, just like we do in the central office, by the way. That in 201 North Front Street, every week there's a broken pipe or a broken whatever, and we're putting in money, bringing in contractors to address them. And so those buildings, we are no longer financially responsible for in terms of the renovations. The Renaissance school partners are. So those are significant cost savings. So it's really a win-win partnership when you think about it in that sense, in that we bring in high-quality school partners to raise the bar for us academically, and also we take, like I just mentioned earlier, money pit of buildings off of our books. And we should all think of it in that light, because that is a substantial cost saving, especially in the budget environment that we're in. We're also just reducing a number of other contracts in the central office to the order of about $3 million. And then with personnel reductions, We cut the central office by 50% last year, and we are projecting another $3 million reduction in terms of personnel, which represents approximately 30 positions. And 30 positions represents approximately a 20% cut in the central office, approximately, give or take. So then we turn to school-based realignment of resources and expenditure reductions. And we first looked at non-personnel expenditures. We worked with each of our principals and said, can you help us find 7 to 10% reduction in your discretionary budgets? And that process, I'm pleased to say, was easier than anticipated. We do believe that there are some minimal cuts we can make at the school level that won't affect field trips, that won't affect extracurricular activities, that won't affect summer school. These are minimal cuts to the order of $1.6 million. So what that leaves us is personnel expenditure reductions. And I'm going to walk you through what that impact would mean in terms of the numbers in just a moment. But the overall number is $22 million, which is less than what we cut last year. We have some key priorities here going forward. We're going to maintain class sizes at or under state mandated limits, and even after last year's cuts, we still have very small class sizes here in Camden. And where parents have come to us and said a certain class is oversized, we've addressed that head on. We're going to ensure that all of our students' IEP needs are met. We're going to provide all the proper academic programming and extracurricular activities. Summer school's not going away. After-school programs aren't going away. And we're going to staff schools based on their unique needs. Creative Arts is a performing arts school and has unique staffing needs. Our family schools are very different than most of our high schools. And so we're going to take that into consideration. But we also have to take into account the reality that given this partnership with Renaissance schools, we do have fewer positions with the district, and we do have to address that by realigning resources to the number of students we're serving. So again, I'm going to walk you through what that entails. As a point of reference here, last year 205 teachers were reduced in force in May. That was based upon 400 positions being eliminated, but the impact to actual people was 205. And due to late separations, we had a number of teachers that left the district basically days before the start of the school year, which per statute is actually illegal. You have to give 60 days notice. We could have sought recourse and stripped people's certifications. We decided not to take that route. But roughly 100 people came back out of the original 205. I think it was a little bit less than 100. And then, so over the next several weeks, what we've been doing is just trying to gain clarity as to what we can project in terms of separation. So separations being those who resign from the district or those who retire from the district. It could also be a performance-based reduction. There is a teacher evaluation process. We take it seriously. We don't hang our hat on it, but we do take it seriously. And for those that don't meet the bar, they would also no longer be with the district. So it's a combination, again, of projecting retirements and resignations, thinking about performance-based reductions, and the third part, which I left out, is some staff may elect to resign and leave the district in order to then work with one of our new partner Renaissance schools. And so that potentially could be, again, another factor in terms of projected staff who are leaving the district, which would then offset any potential reduction in personnel. So what this lays out is a number of different scenarios in terms of what a potential reduction in force could look like. The numbers on the far left are fairly draconian, but they're also not as likely to occur. The reason I want to share with you a number of different scenarios is that at this point in time, it's hard to predict the future. And I just want to make clear that a number of different scenarios could play out. So on the far left, if you expect low attrition, and so what this assumes is that only 50 individuals leave the district because of performance-based evaluations, leaving to go to Renaissance schools, or resigning or retiring for other reasons, you could have a reduction in force of 350. That is unlikely because today we have actually over 50 separations just by virtue of the notifications we receive from our staff. So that is a highly unlikely scenario. On the far right, if your attrition is closer to 400, then you may not have any reduction in force. I would say that that is also unlikely. So the reality would fall somewhere in the middle, which would put us in a slightly better position than we were in last year. So last year, just as a point of reference, the district experienced attrition of approximately 130 school-based staff members from May until the end of the school year. We anticipate more this year. For a number of different reasons, we anticipate more this year, which could offset, again, the impact to what's happening inside of our schools. So, I know that this is really the first and only question some community members ask at budget hearings, so I just wanted to be as clear as possible with you all to lay out what those scenarios could look like. So let me just now walk you through the timeline by which we're going to make these decisions. So currently, we are deploying a survey out to our staff to understand what they anticipate. So in terms of life planning, are they thinking about staying with the district, or are they thinking about leaving the district? If they're thinking about staying with the district, what their grade level preference is, what their certification areas are. We want to hear from them, again, what they want to be doing with the district so we can take that into account. And certainly staff at the impacted schools, at those 5 schools, we especially want to get their input because those that want to remain with the district, all seniority rights are being honored. And I'm realizing I didn't state that earlier, all seniority rights for all staff members will be honored. So staff at Pine Point, Molina here in the North Camden community that want to stay with the district, we want to hear from them where they want to go. April the 7th is when the CEA program notification window ends. The CEA program refers to a sick day buyout program that's in the new contract. And for those that want to participate in that program, which is an incentive to give us earlier notice of their retirement or resignation, that deadline is April the 7th. So we're going to be monitoring the numbers that come through because we want earlier notification. That's a big reason why we created this program. We want to avoid staff telling us in August or September that they're not going to come back. So by April the 7th, we expect more information. By May 15th is the latest that we can notify any person that's in a certified position as to whether or not they will remain with the district, and if they are remaining with the district, what position they will have or which school. So that is the date by which we will make those notifications. And so the days leading up to that, we will be working to get that information out as soon as possible. We will then have a transfer window in June to work with staff that may potentially want to go to a different school. And in August, the school-based staff will receive the projected placement by mid-August, so August the 15th. So I'm now going to ask Regina to come up, there she is, to walk you through the operating budget in some more detail. We can do that. We can do that. Go ahead. So for the board members that have questions, I'd be happy to take some right now since you're asking that we don't wait until the end of Regina's.
When you mentioned about the surplus, you just mentioned it, I don't know if it's a particular...
The fund balance going from 18 million to 9 million?
Yes. And you said you're going to be using the entire surplus.
No, the excess reserves.
The surplus,
so we will still have an
9
emergency reserve.
Okay, but I thought it was a state requirement that we have at least $1 million surplus over and above the emergency.
That will be the
funds.
case. This is an excess to that. Regina, if there's anything else.
Well, I don't. Is that true?
Ms. Oscarella, as far as the fund balance, the excess reserve is what Superintendent Brohanifard is talking about. So we do, by state mandate and statute, do hold a reserve balance that we maintain outside of any releases or excess reserves that we use within our budget.
And how much is that?
It's roughly about 7.5, 8 million. I would have to validate that number.
So in other words, our surplus is more like 16 or 17 million?
If you want to lump it all together.
If you include it together.
Okay. On page 15, when you talk about the reductions in staff, am I correct in assuming that the reductions in staff are solely due to the reductions in student enrollment?
Yeah, so we are aligning resources to the number of students we're serving. So that is correct. And there are clearly hundreds of positions in the 5 impacted schools that we do have to address. But fundamentally, these decisions are driven by the fact that we are serving fewer students and that we're going to align our resources to serve those students. Our overall revenue, as you saw, is flat, and the district gets the lion's share of that revenue on a per pupil basis. So, these decisions are not driven by a lack of revenue, they're just driven by the enrollment, as you noted.
Well, I think that's an important point for the public to understand, that we're not reducing positions for the sake of reducing positions. They're a direct result of the fact that the traditional public schools that we oversee have a reduced student enrollment. Okay.
Correct.
And I think just bear with me, I had a last question somewhere. Are there any departments where we're going to be adding staff? I thought I saw administration, info technology. We have an increase of 96,766. Does that mean we are adding staff? That's page 17, the bottom slide. No, I'm back to what you gave us, not into Regina's presentation.
Where, Ashley, can you tell me which slide she's looking at?
17, bottom. Oh, Regina hasn't shared that one. I jumped ahead. Thank you, that's all I have.
You can save that for Regina.
Okay, I'll save that for Regina. Thank you.
Yeah.
But on that comment, you said that the number of students reduced is about 2,000 and the number of staff is about 400. That would be a lot of, that would be disproportionate unless you have an extremely different class.
Well, I'm gonna go back to this. The number is not 400. The number is still up in the air. So I think we should, right, I think we should revisit that point once we actually have a number to share. But you've also got to remember that there are, whether at the 5 impacted schools or other schools, we do still have inefficiently run schools. And so we do have to take into account some of those issues as well. But the guiding principle is to align resources to the number of students that we're serving. So yes, there are some inefficiencies we're going to be addressing along the way, but this is about wisely investing the $23,500 we have for every student.
I had a second question. Is the cost per student of the public schools X the administration costs, or is that rolled into that?
Yeah, that's all in. So it includes.
So if you took that out, so let's say the charter schools, if you made them on a student basis without having that administrative portion in, you had comment about, well, we have a higher amount. But of course, a good part of that probably is administration. Can you make another statement that has to do with student costs, not administration?
We can calculate that and bring it to the next meeting.
I mean, that would be a good thing.
And I think it's a great question to be asking, but this is why we cut administration by 50% last year. We want to push as much out to the school level, so maybe we'll show it historically over the years.
I think if you put a little more transparency in that other part,
Yeah.
the Renaissance schools, because we can see a little bit more on how they're dealing with that. That might
In terms
be a
of
good way.
what their administrative overhead is as a percentage.
Absolutely, because then you can talk about the issue of resources being applied to students, which would answer questions that are in this.
It's a great question. It's a great question, and we'll come with some answers at the next meeting. We'll see you at the next meeting, I hope.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Rohanafort, and good evening, everyone. Hopefully, everyone's had the opportunity to pick up a budget that either was given to you or you picked up. Yes, exactly. Yes, that's the advertised budget that we will be going over this evening. Okay. As Superintendent Rohanafort mentioned, the district has submitted their balanced budget on time as required by the state of New Jersey. And as I go through and read the line items in the budget versus a year ago, most of the changes, as superintendent discussed will be based on the enrollment information that he presented. So I'm going to go through the line items. I'm sorry, I'm probably going to turn this way. So, yeah. I'm going to go through the individual line items, and some of them will be collectively part of the realignment of resources as part of the overall enrollment changes, and the rest of them I will specifically speak out and give you some narrative on them. To start with the first one, which is regular programs of instruction, $1.7 million decrease versus the adjusted budget for the 2014-15 year was driven mainly by reductions in non-personnel services and supplies procured centrally to support our schools. So that is the first line with regards to the regular programs of instruction, and again, that's non-personnel related cost. The second line I'm going to touch on is the summer school, the decrease of the $1.3 million. That overall is not a decrease, but will be restored as part of an overall budgetary need of our summer school. It's a common occurrence with our summer school programs or across school districts where we assess our overall needs for summer school, and then we will ensure that our summer school programs are fully funded. When I go down to the bottom line, which is the community services programs in operation, that's about, again, a $900,000, almost $1 million decrease. Again, that is, if you look at the 14-15 year, there is some one-time charges that are in there that we will not be accruing or happening again in the 15-16 year. So that's kind of where you see, if you look at the 13-14 year, we spent roughly about $400,000. There's some one-time programming in the community services and programs operation that was in the 14-15 year. And because they were one-time, we eliminated them, and we have more aligned to prior year spending of the $470,000. When I go into the next page, I'm going to talk collectively on a few of these line items. They all tell the same narrative. And most of it was when I look at, since I've come to the district, and how we want to realign school-based or school-related expenditures and making sure that they reside in the proper homes within our budgets. We've moved those out of central office and moved them into the school-based budgets. And that includes attendance and social work, health services, speech, occupational, and physical therapy, guidance, child study team. So all of those where you see those which would appear to be a cut is really just a realignment from an accounting perspective that they should move towards schools versus remaining in central office. The last one here for a media service library, an increase of about $400,000. That is network and software upgrades that the district has committed to improve within our schools. Moving on to the next page, again, there's a couple of ones that I'm going to lump together. It's the support services general, the operations and maintenance, and the employee benefits. Those are, as Superintendent Rohanafart mentioned, that when we have a reduction in staff, we have an overall reduction in benefits. So if you look at those three lines, again, they move with the overall communication that we talked about earlier with regards to enrollment changes. When you look at the instructional staff training, that $1 million that sits there, we are not reducing any professional development, but again, we're gaining alignment and we're moving the proposed out of central office into the schools. Facilities acquisition and construction services, $5.3 million. Again, there is a reduction here that's attributed to the work that the SCA is doing. We recognize that we had some dollars here that we no longer needed to support our capital budget projects because they were being funded through the SDA. Most of you guys are aware that the Camden High is being funded through the SDA, and we are going to make sure that our smaller capital projects are addressed with our internal capital needs. The transfer of funds to charter and resident Renaissance schools. Again, we've talked about enrollment. We've talked about earlier where the students are going. So those are the dollars that we would pay to our charter and our Renaissance schools. The general fund contribution to school-based budget, which is the acronym for SBB, we will see a overall net decline of $11.5 million. Again, realigning our resources, changing enrollment, the net effect between all the accounting changes we're doing, moving stuff from central office into school-based budgets, and the overall net change resulted in an $11.5 million difference. If I look at preschool aid is relatively flat overall. There's about $1 million change there. Overall, when you look at the preschool budget, it's actually up with regards to the amount of aid that was funded from the 14-15 to the 15-16 year. Where you're looking at the $1 million variance is due to a change in the available carryover funding, which resulted in that $1 million change. But overall, your pre-K budget is up based on the enrollment of your pre-K program. I'm going to go into federal sources with regards to our NCLB, which is No Child Left Behind, and all the title programs that come through on it. It's slightly down, and I'm just going to flip for a second. So you'll see the Title I funding that's down about $500,000. Your Title II, your Title III is up about $1 million collectively. Your IDA is up about $700,000. And if you look at your total federal projects or federal sources is down about $2.6 million. That's relatively due to some grants that are sunsetting this year. It's the SIG grant. There's the RTT3 or Race to the Top program that will sunset in the 14-15 year, and the Fit for Life program that resulted in the $2.6 million change in federal funding that we've gotten. Overall, when we budget for any given year, I'm just going to go back for a second. Overall, when we budget for any given year, our federal dollars and the guidance that we're giving is to project 85% of our current year's funding. So in here also is a projection based on our $14-15 as far as the guidance we give when we're doing budget process. And this just here is just a summation of our total net adjustment going from the 362 to the 349. And again, this is something Superintendent Rohanafort talked about earlier on in the presentation, that although our state aid is flat, you know, we had some change in our fund balance and some overall changes that's driving the 362 for the, versus the 349. But the net difference is $13 million. This here highlights what we have as the proposed budget for the 15-16 year with regards to our tuition that we provide for out-of-district placement. And it's just like any other district where, you know, we have to send kids out of the district and we have to pay for them to go to our receiving school districts. And as you can see, if you look at what we send, you know, we spend about $2.6 million on state facilities, another $2.9 million on VOTEC, LEAs with the other states, $2.1 million, and private schools, we have it here for the handicap of about $8 million. So this is stuff that we spend about $18.5 million that we send kids out of the district to provide services for. Overall on transportation, it's relatively flat versus what we're spending this year. We spend about $10.5 million in transportation to move our kids in and out around the district. So that's that number. If I look at the overall, what we are projecting in our budget for the 15-16 year, we have about 800,000 sitting in there, and that's, again, the continuation of upgrades of our WAN and security updates, our software upgrades through our technology department. Again, this is just to capture on our state aid, 279.6 million is relatively flat over the past few years on how we've gotten our state aid, so there's been no change on what we get from a state aid perspective. Again, this is a recap of our Title I or NCLB dollars. 15.9 million comes through as part of our federal grants or our sources of federal funding. This is a recap of our non-public aid. We get about $1.5 million and another $31.5 million on our preschool aid that comes into the district. And overall, our net appropriations and our net revenues equals the $349.3 million and how we've captured our budget for the 15-16 year. Just as a note, the budget will be on file and open for examination at the administration building. Any questions? I don't know. How do we do it? Just questions, yeah. Yes.
What happened to the funds required to repair the Loretta L. Green School? I didn't see that reported in tonight's meeting, and I wasn't sure where it was in the budget. The flooding of the school.
Yeah, that's in the current year's budget.
So that was why the 1 year is higher than the next year going on?
Well,
Will that school be put into service for 2015?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
So it will be fully prepared and
Absolutely.
that maintenance budget is part of what you're talking about? The
Absolutely,
actuals right now?
absolutely, and that's kind of what you're seeing with regards to some of the money that we repurposed to help support some of those initiatives with regards to Woodrow Wilson and for Cream as well. Hi. This pretty much has been submitted to the county for approval, so I don't expect it to dramatically shrink. I'm not understanding dramatically shrink. These are our projected numbers based on our best estimates with regards to, hey, we are assuming 85% of our federal dollars. So that is the guidance that we've been given from the federal to assume that number. That number will plus or minus change based on our total dollars that we will get from the government, but it's not expected to change dramatically because we're assuming the 85%.
Ms. Robinson, this section is for board member questions.
I'm sorry.
Public comment is
I'm sorry.
next.
Okay.
So you guys can ask your questions
Yeah,
next.
he did ask, and so I thought
Okay.
you said yes. Hi.
Forgive me if you answered this, I didn't hear it. Page 17, the bottom slide, undistributed expenditure, administrative info, technology. Does that represent an increase?
I'm sorry, I'm going to walk over because you said, please said
Said 17, bottom slide.
Hers is different. 30, slide
34. 34, okay, I'll use those numbers.
page 30. Okay, I'm sorry. Give me your question again.
The $96,766 increase, what is that for?
96,000, it's not staffing.
It's what?
It's non-staffing related, so I would have to just go back and look into that line.
Well, it says administration, info technology.
Can I follow up with you on that?
Sure. Another general question. Do I assume that staff will be paying more this year for their medical coverage contribution?
Yes, we assumed a 10.3% increase in medical benefits.
So what is the total that they're paying out of pocket?
Each employee,
What percentage? Well, she said it's increasing 10.
I would have to look at each individual family, each individual
No, I'm just talking about
classification.
percentage,
Yeah.
roughly. You said it's going up 10.
We factored in 10.3% as a overall increase in the health benefits. How much of that is the contributions for the employees, I would have to see
Okay.
what that equates to.
Your slide number 37, page 19, top slide.
Yep.
You want to put it up? Title I's being cut $535,133. What's being cut, or is that just a general number?
So part of the Title I funding is the sunsetting of 3 grants. It was the SIG grant that's going to end this year. It's the Race for the Top, or the RTT3, that will sunset this year, and the Fit for Life.
Okay. So essentially, we'll be even funded from last year.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Your slide number 39, page 20, top slide. It says deduct, transfer, local contribution, transfer to special revenue inclusion. What does that mean?
Yep, so that's the transfer of dollars that are allocated to your pre-K. So one of the changes that you will see this year versus that's different from last year. We have a total revenue line, and then it's adjusted by the transfers to pre-K, and then you have a net revenue line, and that is the difference between the two, or the delta between the two.
Well, why do we separate it?
Why is it separated?
Yeah. Why is it a separate line item?
That's a good question,
Okay.
but it does call it
It's an
out. I think-
accounting, it's an
yeah.
accounting.
Yeah, and I think it just follows the trail of how it moves out and how it moves back in. So it's good to call it out, because then pre-K needs to know how to pick it up as well.
Okay.
But it does look at it differently, where this year we called out a total revenue, and then we adjusted for those, and then we identified a net revenue number.
So do I assume that means we're getting more pre-K students?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Hi, Ms. Wilson.
Ms. Robinson, on the Title I, were you referring to under special grants and entitlements, the fundings that is sunsetting?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Were you referring to the funding for Title I, II, III, all of that? Are you talking about under special grants and entitlements?
Title I.
Title I,
Title I.
but we have Title I in more than one area. Revenues from the federal sources.
It's the first line of Title I.
Are we under revenues for the federal sources?
Yes, federal sources,
Okay, and
on
so,
page 37.
all right, I don't have that one in front of me. So the special grants and entitlements, where Title I, Title II, III, all of that, is that sunsetting? Is that the one that is sunsetting?
No. It's the SIG and the Race to the Top and the Fit for Life that's sunsetting that rolled up into the Title I programming, or the Title I funding,
Okay.
if I'm answering your question.
All right, I'll make an appointment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board members? Okay.
We're now going into the public comment portion. Here are the rules for the budget hearing public comment. In accordance with NJSA 18A:7A-51, the Camden City School District is now opening up tonight's budget hearing for public comment about the budget only. As stated in NJSA 18A:22-13, the purpose of this public comment period for this budget hearing is so, quote, the taxpayers and other interested persons shall have an opportunity to present objections and be heard with respect to said budget and the amounts of money necessary to be appropriated and the various items and purposes for which the same are to be appropriated for the use of the public schools in the district for the ensuing school year. In other words, this time is designated for the public to state your comments, suggestions, and objections to the budget that was just presented by the school business administrator and the superintendent. Each person who signed up to comment for tonight's budget hearing will have 3 minutes. You will be notified when your 3 minutes are up. You cannot yield your time to another person. When it is your turn to speak, please remain at the podium and address all of your comments to the board president or the superintendent. We will not interrupt you during your 3 minutes of comments, but please note that if your comments are about any non-budget items that are not relevant to the budget hearing, then I will interrupt and ask you to withhold those comments for another meeting. Members of the audience should also not interrupt the speaker at the podium. If you have any questions, please ask your questions during your 3-minute comment period. After the public comment period is closed, the school business administrator or superintendent or his designee will address your questions to the extent provided by law. Thank you for your understanding. First commenter is Carmen Stokes. Number 1, Carmen Stokes. Number 2, Gary Frazier.
Good evening again, everyone. So I wanted to direct your attention. I just had one question. Well, one of my questions is I was trying to figure out what's going to happen to our pre-K kids, what's happening with Center for Family Services and also our Head Start children. I understand, it's to my understanding that some of those children, it's to my understanding that space will be rented on the KIP Norcross spot. So I'm wondering, as I'm looking at this budget, how everything's playing into play as I see it. Are those children going to be easy numbers to transfer over to KIP afterwards from the Head Start school? That's one of my first questions. And then my second question would be, I'm still concerned, I think you can give clarity, I know I asked you, but I want some clarity on the transfer of funds to the resident Renaissance schools. That's a huge number going over to the Renaissance schools. So that's one of my questions. And also, looking at the regular programs instruction, I see a decrease in that as well. I want to get a better understanding of what's going on with that. Again, I know we agree to disagree in some areas here, but as I'm taking a look at this budget and trying to break it down, it's just not expression enough for me to be able to, give any type of feedback. So we would like to see this broken down a little bit more so that we can, well, is it possible we could see the entire budget? I know that probably won't happen, but, just looking at a bunch of numbers on the paper and then kind of trying to play the guessing game in your head as opposed to what you hear, what you know to be the truth, and what is actually the truth is impactful. So when I look at these numbers here and I see, this is horrendous, but, nonetheless, I'm not satisfied with what I'm seeing here, Mr. Bayman. And it seems that funds are being used in areas where I don't think they're helping us here in our district. And I'd be more than likely to take this conversation offline so I can show you some areas based upon the data and research that we have done Again, 3 minutes doesn't give me enough time to begin the process of even talking about most of this stuff, but just some things that I just saw in this report, man. I just want to see our district do better.
Number 3, Monique Ragsdale. Okay. Number 4, Sarah Jocelyn.
I wondered where in the budget the funds for this CEA is included for your anticipated special funds for people that are going to be leaving early. I was not able to identify that. The second question I had is last September there were going to be a total of 4 parent centers. There was one that was opened in the fall. One has just been opened in Croc. We're still missing 2. Are those eliminated, or are they going to be funded in the new budget? And then I didn't see here, and I had submitted a separate question of whether there was a detailed board report that was an annual assessment. I became aware of this kind of report being provided by the advisory board in Newark, and I was not able to find this level of detailed report on the Camden City public website, so I'm looking to see if that assessment has been written. Thank you.
Number 5, Brian Morton. 5, Brian Morton. Number 6, Mongalisa Davis. Mongalisa Davis. Number 7, Ariane White. Ariane White. That's it for public comment.
Okay. So one quick clarifying point to Ms. Jocelyn's comments during the presentation itself. I do want to just state again that enrollment is an important criteria. It's not the only criteria. It's the main criteria, the main factor, if you will, in terms of the way we've been putting together this proposed budget. So just want to reemphasize that point. Mr. Frazier, I had a hard time making out some of your earlier comments, but I believe you were touching on special ed students in low incident programming, students with autism, Down syndrome, et cetera. We will maintain those programs. Where those students are attending current impacted schools that we have proposed to partner with Renaissance schools, and if they elect to stay with the Renaissance schools, they will serve those students and meet their needs. So they'll have an autism program or they'll have a Down syndrome program. So that will be the case for them, just as it is the case with us as well and our students. I didn't fully follow your point about Head Start. I think you were making a more general point in terms of the dollars that are being allocated to Renaissance and charter schools. That number is, for the district, we will be spending $23,500 for every student. Renaissance schools, for every student they serve, will be spending about $18,000, $19,000, and charter schools about $13,000, $14,000. So the total increase to Renaissance charter schools, I think you were asking about that. As I presented, it's about $33 million, and that's based on a projection of a substantial increase of families choosing to send their students to those schools. And Ms. Jocelyn, you asked about the CEA program. Yeah, so it's just baked into the overall salary and expenditure, so staff and instruction. So it's just baked into that. And once we share out the total numbers, you can easily calculate what that would cost. And you asked also a question about, are the 2 other parent centers that we promised, are they being cut in this budget? The answer is no. We are still moving forward with those. We're just trying to finalize the terms of the partnerships. So we are. Yeah, so the funding we're going to pursue for those 2 parent centers is coming from another source. So we're still moving forward with those two parent centers. Appreciate you asking. You mentioned a detailed board report that Newark pulled together. Would love if you could just share it with us so we can see what it entails. Maybe we've got something similar we could share. Maybe we can pull something together new. Tia has it? Is it a financial report? Just a general report, okay. Because we do have a detailed line item financial report, which is available in the district office if you'd like it. But we'll loop up with Tia and see. Yeah. Yeah, and so Gary, I think you were asking about that detailed report. It's going to be available in the central office. You can come pick it up tomorrow. You can come review it in the central office. You can't take it home with you, I was just told, so I take that back. You can come review it in the central office. Under my supervision. No, that part's a joke. Come to the central office, and you can come take a look. That culminates my responses. Yeah.
That's where I would like to see the breakout, the line items to go with the account.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
You supposed to say second.
All opposed, say nay.
Make the motion.
Meeting adjourned.